Hello everyone and welcome back to the stormy love story between James and Diep. In the previous episode, James took decisive action to protect the ones he loves most. He arranged for his son to be taken abroad by his mother to a safe place, far away from any danger. As for Diep, the woman he cherishes above all, James made arrangements for her to stay at the home of a notorious gangster's parents. A place so feared that even John wouldn't dare to set foot near. But that wasn't all. James also took the initiative to confront John directly, a cunning and ruthless enemy, who has been secretly manipulating various underground forces. Their meeting wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration of war. James was no longer retreating. He was ready to fight to the end for his company, his honor, and his love. It seemed the only battle left was against John, but then tragedy struck again. Stay tuned for today's video and don't miss a single dramatic moment. After days of intense confrontation with John, James thought the storm had finally passed. But nature had other plans. Climate change had made the weather more brutal than ever. Natural disasters struck repeatedly, each time more violent than the last, and this time, James's company could not escape unscathed. The recent storm left behind heavy damage, factories submerged in deep water, timber transportation routes cut off, and entire residential areas near the raw forest zones completely isolated. Locals lost everything, workers were filled with anxiety, and James, bearing the weight of it all, was nearly exhausted from trying to hold everything together. He thought all that was left was to recover from the storm, but that was only the beginning. A historic flood, the worst in 50 years, was forecasted to strike in just 2 days. The epicenter? Right where James had built everything, the factory, the precious timber warehouse, the forest, his family's legacy for generations. He stayed up all night, red-eyed, staring at weather maps, joining emergency meetings with local authorities and rescue teams. But what weighed on James's heart the most wasn't the financial loss, it was the people. Hundreds of households lived around that area, many of them elderly or with young children. People who had helped him build his business from the ground up. People who called him young master, their benefactor. James knew that if the water came, they wouldn't stand a chance. And so, he made a bold, risky decision to halt all production and mobilize every available resource, manpower, vehicles, funds to help evacuate the residents before the flood arrived. Even if he lost everything, he could not lose his conscience. That night, James sat silently by the window, the dim glow of the streetlight casting a pale yellow hue across his pensive face. A light drizzle fell, a quiet sign that the weather was turning worse. He couldn't sleep. News of the historic flood echoed in his mind like a relentless drumbeat. Weather maps, reports from the operations team, calls from local officials, they all pointed to one thing: time was running out. In the darkness, James faced his fears alone, not fear of losing property, but fear for the people. The workers who had helped him build the very first timber factory. The families living on the edge of the forest, where he had once promised he would never abandon them. He clenched his fists and looked up at the foggy sky. Beside him was a small photo frame. A picture of Diep and their son, taken during one of their rare, peaceful afternoons together. "Diep, will you be angry with me when you find out?" James asked himself in silence. He knew that if he told her his plan, she would be worried sick. But he also knew he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. "I'm going back." James thought to himself, "I'll personally lead the flood defense efforts. And if I must, I'll stay afterward to help the villagers rebuild everything from scratch." That evening, the drizzle still fell steadily. James drove to pick up Diep, not in his usual elegant suits, but in a simple rolled-up shirt, his face quiet and weighed down with thought. They went to a small local diner. It had been a long time since the two had shared any private time together. After dinner, they sat under the stars, talking quietly. The night sky that evening was quietly beautiful. Thousands of stars stretched across the heavens, glowing like tiny flames trying to resist the suffocating darkness, just like James, clinging to every ounce of peace before the storm returned. The rustling wind through the trees, the faint sounds of cars in the distance, all seemed to fade away, making room for a rare, intimate moment just for the two of them. She rested her head on his shoulder, saying nothing. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was a kind of deep understanding, as if the rhythm of each other's breath was enough. James gently tightened his grip on her hand, then spoke slowly, but firmly. His voice was low and heavy, carrying the weight of an emotional tide. "Diep, I haven't been able to sleep these past few nights. I've been thinking a lot. There's something I can't keep from you any longer." Diep looked up, her eyes clear and calm. She didn't rush him, just waited, heart open, for him to speak. James took a deep breath, as if to summon courage. "I'm going back to the heart of the storm." He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "I want to personally lead the workers and coordinate with the local authorities in the evacuation and flood response, and I'll stay afterward to help recover from the damage. I know it's dangerous, but if I don't do this, I won't be able to live with myself." Diep remained silent. She bowed her head, fingers tightening around his. "James, I'm proud of you. Because you're not just a good husband or father, you're a man with a heart full of responsibility. But I'm also your wife. I have the right to be afraid." She looked up at him, eyes shimmering with tears. "I'm scared that one day you won't come back. I don't know how I'd face that." James gently reached out, brushing back her hair, and rested his warm palm on her cheek, where the first tear had fallen. "I know, I'm scared too, but I can't be selfish. Sometimes we have to do the right thing. Even if it hurts, please believe me, I will come back to you and to our son." Diep was quiet for a long moment. Then, suddenly, she took a deep breath, as if making a monumental decision. "Take me with you." James froze. "What?" "I want to go with you. I can't stay here, waiting anxiously for every message, every call. I don't want to just sit and be afraid. I want to be by your side, not to burden you, but to walk with you." James turned away slightly, his eyes welling up. He knew that place wasn't safe, not meant for her. But he also knew the woman he loved never had a weak heart. "Diep, you have a young child. You shouldn't take this risk. I can't let you face danger with me, James. I promise I'll be careful. I don't need to do anything big. Just be there, help with small things, listen, support, encourage. I believe our love will be the most precious thing in that harsh place." There was a long, wordless pause. Then finally, James nodded, not because he gave in, but because he understood. This was no longer just his decision, but a sacred choice they both made. "All right, but promise me, always stay close, not even one step away. I can't lose you." Diep smiled through her tears, her eyes sparkled under the starlit sky. "I promise, no matter how fierce the storm, I'll never let go of your hand." Early the next morning, before the first light of dawn, thick fog blanketed the streets in a ghostly white, and a cold breeze whispered through the air, as if warning that the challenges ahead would be far from easy. The entire city was still slumbering in a fragile silence. Only James and Diep were already awake, long before the world stirred. That night, the storm hit. It wasn't just a heavy rain, it was a raging tempest with thunder, lightning, and wind howling like it was tearing straight through the hearts of those still standing. James, Diep, and the rescue team had done everything they could, evacuating villagers, reinforcing homes, securing the warehouse. But nature knew no limits. And when daylight broke, the full scale of the destruction revealed itself beneath a bleak, gray sky. Fields of ripening rice that were lush and green just yesterday now lay submerged in muddy water, littered with broken straw. Houses once crowned with bright red tile roofs were reduced to crumbling walls, drenched beds, and scattered pieces of clothing buried in debris. The scene before them was enough to break any heart. Diep stood on the muddy village road, eyes scanning her surroundings. Shirtless children crying out for their mothers. Women clinging to the remnants of collapsed homes. Elderly men and women hunched over rain-soaked memorial photos. It's not just property, some have lost their loved ones too, she heard someone murmur nearby, her chest tightened. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. Mixing with the wind, still carrying the bitter salt of soil and sorrow, she covered her mouth. Trying to stifle a sob, James, her voice trembled. There are things that can never be brought back. James stepped forward, gently holding her shoulders. His eyes were bloodshot too, fixed on the remains of a collapsed house, where a family of 4 had sheltered the night before, and now only 2 had survived. I know, he said hoarsely, we couldn't save everyone, but we can rebuild with them. From this wreckage, at least, we still have each other. Just then, from afar came the sound of voices, calling out, lifting wooden planks, rebuilding makeshift homes. The villagers didn't sit and cry. They wiped their tears and stood back up, one family offering shelter to another. James's factory workers, despite having lost their own homes, rolled up their sleeves and carried bags of cement, coils of electric cable, anything they could offer. No one was left behind. No one stood alone. Day 3 after the storm, the sky remained a dull ash gray. The floodwaters had yet to recede. Rising to the rooftops of homes that once sheltered generations, there were no birdsong, no morning street vendors calling out, only the creaking of torn rooftops, the soft lapping of water against decaying tree trunks, and the sound of people struggling to survive. A small wooden boat carried James, Diep, and 3 other volunteers deeper into the hardest-hit area, a place no rescue team had been able to reach for the past 3 days. There, people clung to the remnants of their rooftops, starving, thirsty, and exhausted from waiting. Diep sat in the center of the boat, tightly cradling the relief supplies, packets of noodles, bottles of water, boxes of medicine, each held like a precious treasure. She looked out and saw villagers waving from afar. Stranded on rooftops barely above the waterline, children no longer had the strength to cry. They simply sat in silence, their eyes blank and dazed. James, she whispered, I've never seen people look so fragile. James only nodded, eyes red. He said nothing he couldn't. The boat neared the remains of an old levee, the deepest, most treacherous part of the flood. Branches floated listlessly. Strange debris lurked beneath the murky surface, and then disaster struck again from upstream. A sudden flash flood surged forward. The water level rose in an instant, swirling violently as if to devour everything in its path. Shouts rang out. The boat rocked violently, tilted, and capsized. Everyone was thrown into the water. All cries for help, all desperate flailing, were drowned out by the fury of nature. Diep was swept away. The life jacket she wore, her only hope of staying afloat, got snagged on a rusty metal beam jutting from a collapsed rooftop. The sharp edge tore through the fabric. Water flooded in. The jacket shredded, her breathing quickened. She began to sink. James saw everything in a flash. He lunged through the water like an arrow. Diep, hold on to me, he screamed, his voice hoarse, shattered by panic. He reached her. Her body was ice cold, limp, her arms curled in exhaustion. Without hesitation, James stripped off his own life jacket and struggled to get it onto her, fighting the raging current, strapping each buckle, locking her in. She sobbed, weakly shaking her head. No, you need it more than I do. But James looked at her, eyes blazing with fierce resolve. I don't need anything except for you to live. Please live for me too. They clung to each other for a moment. Amidst the chaos, time seemed to freeze. Their love, beaten by the storm, still burned brightly in the heart of the flood. They grasped a floating wooden post together. James held her hand tightly, as if letting go for even a second would mean losing his entire world. But nature wasn't done with them yet. A massive wave came crashing Down, it tore the two of them apart, hurling them in opposite directions, as if to separate them forever. Diep slammed into a submerged rock, blood seeped into the icy water. She lost consciousness. Her limp body drifted, her head striking a shattered sheet of metal. She went still. James screamed, a sound that ripped through the air, only to be swallowed by the roar of water. He tried to swim to her, but without a life jacket and drained from saving her, he was powerless. Waves pummeled his chest, his shoulders, his head. He flailed, reaching out in helpless desperation. The last thing he saw was Diep drifting into the misty current, wearing the life jacket that had once been his, and then James, too, was swallowed by the flood. His body vanished into the churning depths. Amid the raging waves, the overwhelming loss, and the wreckage of devastation, there was one thing that wasn't swept away: love, compassion, and unconditional sacrifice. James, the man who chose to risk his life to save the woman he loved; Diep, the wife who braved every danger just to stand by her husband's side in the heart of the storm. Will they ever get the chance to see each other again? Will Diep wake up? Is James still alive somewhere, fighting to reach the light? And more than anything, will fate allow them to return to the little boy waiting for his mother and father in that peaceful home? Do good people still get to find peace and grace sometimes? Miracles don't lie in grand gestures, they lie in this one quiet truth, that after everything, we still get to hold the one we love in our arms. Let us pray for James and Diep. And don't miss the next episode, where the answers will begin to unfold. Will love triumph over fate? Stay tuned for the next chapter.
Hello, xin chào tất cả mọi người. Mọi người ơi, thì hôm nay câu chuyện của James và Diệp nó đang chuyển biến theo một chiều hướng khá là xấu, khi mà James và Diệp đều đang gặp nguy hiểm. Và liệu hai người có thể an toàn tính mạng, về nhà với con và có thể tiếp tục câu chuyện tình yêu của mình hay không, thì mọi người hãy đón xem vào phần sau nhé. Thực sự thì câu chuyện hôm nay nó mình xem thôi là mình đã thấy rất là cảm động rồi, và cũng cầu xin cho là James và Diệp sẽ có được sự bình an, bởi vì hai người thực sự là những người tốt, đi giúp đỡ những người ở trong vùng thiên tai lũ lụt, mà chẳng may thì nó gặp cái điều không may như thế thì ai cũng rất là buồn. Mong là mọi người hãy cùng đón xem tập sau để biết tiếp được diễn biến câu chuyện, và hãy cầu mong cho James và Diệp bình yên quay về mọi người nhé. Và mọi người ơi, nếu như mà mọi người yêu quý cũng như là ủng hộ kênh mình thì mọi người hãy like, share, sau đó là thả tim ở bình luận hoặc là để lại bình luận để góp ý cho mình. Còn bây giờ thì xin chào và hẹn gặp lại trong những video tiếp theo.